Good morning, everyone. While Sam is getting this presentation up and running, this is our last webinar for the year. Thanks for joining us. And lots of good information here today. Hope you can you have the opportunity to stay with us for the rest of the hour, as well as share this with others within your organization. Sam, let's get started. Okay. The thing that is on most people's mind is EVV. EVV is what everybody is talking about. There is a lot of activity around EVV. We're certainly seeing the activity amongst our customers, and several have started and are rolling out EVV. And so we're going to talk about that, help you prepare for it, and talk about some common issues that people are facing. Also, part of this webinar is setting you up for success. There are certain things that are year-end activities that I think are important activities as we see agencies use this as best practices. We want to share some of that with you. And there are also certain periodic activities that we think you should consider on a regular basis, whether it's daily, monthly, weekly, yearly. But these are things that we see other agencies do that we would like to share with you that I think would help maximize Pavillio, as well as help run the organization better. So when you leave this webinar, you're going to hopefully get both of those EVV information, as well as some tips and tricks and best utilization of the Pavillio platform, and some ideas that we think would help you run your organization better. So let's dive right in. EVV rollout in Minnesota. We've done a number of webinars on EVV. This is what the rollout schedule is. We're in phase 2 currently, and wave 1 of phase 2 will give you a little information about that. Wave 2 of phase 2 is what we are moving into here, hopefully in the next week or so. And phase 3 and phase 4 we will talk about later next year. So current state of EVV. Phase 1, wave 1 went live last month on the 14th. Part of this, what we saw was that we expected a lot more agencies to go live, but what we heard from HHA and DHS is only 10 voluntary agencies that went live, and these 10 agencies only had a subset of services that they went live with. So much smaller pilot than we expected. We were actually expecting all the HHA agencies to go live, but that didn't happen. So we're not sure as to what HHA and DHS has learned as a result of these 10 agencies that have gone live. Hopefully we'll hear something about that here in the next week or so. But it looks like DHS is still on track for the mid-December soft launch, and I want to talk a little bit about this. Mid-December soft launch essentially means that DHS is asking people to sign up, or rather, DHS is expecting HHA agencies to go live, as well as agencies that are on Cache and other software platforms to go live. And it's a soft launch, implying that they don't expect all clients to be submitting time via EVV, this is going to be a rollout that's going to happen over a course of several months. So keep that in mind. The key here is, as an agency, we want you to be getting ready for EVV, as well as sending some of those timesheets through EVV and not paper, and then on a monthly basis keep adding more and more till eventually you have everybody on board. So just keep that in mind. We are already in discussions with the aggregator, which is HHA. They are currently, we had conversations with them earlier this week, and they're supposed to be sending us credentials for many of our agencies that have already sent in their paperwork. So we'll talk about that as well. So this mid-December seems to be still the same timeline. So DHS has sent out another notification through Minutes mailbox to get people to connect with the aggregator. Looks like there are still a bunch of people that haven't connected. We know some of our customers haven't, and we're going to share some information here with you that'll help you get connected. So what do you have to do? There's a survey that has to be completed. This is what's in your minutes mailbox. If you haven't done this, please do this. This is critical that you get this sent. Once you do that, you also have to send an email to EDI support. And then once they receive that, they're going to send you an attestation form, which you need to complete. And Sam, can you walk through what people are supposed to do with the survey as well as the rest of the items?
Yeah, so that brings us to this integration. So one of the things that we've heard is that this is really kind of redundant. It's the same information that you're sending in multiple ways. This is the enrollment form. This is what came in through your minutes mailbox, and this is what you have to complete to say, yes, I am this agency, I have these services, I have this many caregivers, this is the way that I plan to submit my time, whether you're using Cache for your EVV vendor, how you're planning to connect with HHA. So this is that first step in telling HHA that you're with us. Once you complete this form, you do have to send that email to the EDI support. And basically in the email, you just say, I am this agency, this is my FEIN, and we are using Cache. Again, it's same process as the first form, but this gets us in the loop then with HHA. They will send you back that attestation link, and in that same step, you fill out a lot of that same information again. But if you do want our assistance with completing the third step, go ahead and send that email to us. So this is the attestation form. And what this is saying is basically that you attest that you are following all of the EDI requirements. And that is something that Cache does on your behalf. So if you do want us to complete this form, we have gotten confirmation that we can do that for you. So go ahead and send that to us to support@cachesoftware.com or to me directly, and we can get those sent in for you. For those of you that haven't completed these pieces yet, like Prabha said, through the minutes mailbox, they have sent out another survey, that first step. And then we are also going to be doing a campaign here to reach out to anybody who we know hasn't submitted those as well. Prabha?
Yeah, so waiting on DHS, there are a few items still that are still unanswered by DHS. First, what is the full compliance date? We don't have a full compliance date, implying, we are starting here in December. You need to be fully compliant by March, by June. We don't know that, and so we're encouraging our customers to roll out as once you're connected, once you've converted some people over to EVV, I think it just makes sense to keep charging ahead and getting as many people cut over, so that we're not really focused on this compliance date, but at least you're well ahead of the game. We have several agencies that are well ahead of the game, and they're successfully submitting time. And to that end, I also want to point out that we have now 15,000 EVV users with Cache, and that number is growing on a weekly basis. Second, telephony is, the DHS has not clarified what the telephony requirements are and what the expectation of using telephony will be. And this is basically for people that do not have access to an app and the ability to have a device that they can send electronic time with, and are choosing to use telephony. From our research as well as our conversations, this is a very, very small number. But we're still waiting on DHS to give us some guidance. Live-in caregivers. Live-in caregiver, DHS has spoken about there being an exception for this, but they have not specified or given us details on how this is to be handled. We are working with a number of FMS agencies. The FMS agencies have this live-in caregiver exemption where they have the ability to submit time on a weekly basis as opposed to real-time clock in and clock out. But for non-FMS, DHS hasn't given us direction yet. So as we learn more, we will share that with you. And QP visits, in one of our prior conversations with DHS, they did say that QP visits is going to be, EVV is going to be required for QP visits. That too, they haven't specified details yet, and we're waiting to hear more on that so that we can adjust our app to respond and be able to support QP visits through our app. And there are several other things that I think DHS still needs to clarify. One example is, okay, how many times can you, how many exceptions are you allowed to have per agency or per caregiver or per RP? How many times can you edit time? All these things are unclear, and we hope to hear more here in the next upcoming months, and we will share that with you. And a couple of other things. We had this in one of our previous webinars. You're with Cache, and if you're with Cache, there is a lot of benefits compared to HHA's product. And we've gone through and identified several things. In fact, yesterday in a conversation with, I think it was Provider Alliance, there was someone else who was on the chat who expressed their frustration that they couldn't do MCO billing with HHA, and now they have to figure another solution. It's something that HHA did not share with them, I suppose, when they signed up with HHA. And another item that is critical is if you are converting people and having them use a tool to submit time, HHA does not have a way for you to submit time if it is not an EVV service, whereas in Pavillio, you can submit time for all the services that your organization has, and many of our customers have services that don't require EVV, but our app will support that, and you can submit time. And there are many other features that we've mentioned here. A couple of others, Sam, that I think we have. Can you switch to the next slide? Most of this overlap protection, we have the ability for paper timesheet and batch entry. We can check for OIG so that if someone's on the OIG list, that person will not be able to clock in. So many things that we are doing that HHA's app and HHA the platform is not capable of doing. The fact that we're Minnesota based and that we understand the services also really helps our agents. So if you're with us and you're using our product, rest assured that you're in good hands, and we'll continue to evolve and improve. And there are several changes that are upcoming here in the next few months to support this transition to EVV.
So in the interim, yeah, as we're waiting for, the clarifications from DHS, as we're waiting for the credentials to kind of get started with the HHA integration, there are some things that you can do today to make yourself more successful. One of those things is making sure that you have accurate client and caregiver email addresses. Many of the clients and caregivers initially were set up in the system with fake emails because at one time and beyond just communication, there wasn't a reason that they needed to have a valid email. And with EVV, that has changed. Each caregiver will need to have that valid email address to log in and capture time. And actually, with having that unique login credentials, the signature piece, the physical signature as it stands today, will no longer be required. We also did get clarification on that from DHS. So by the caregiver signing in with their credentials and the client signing in with their credentials to approve the visits, that is considered their electronic signature. So there will be some changes coming around the physical signature piece as well. Another thing you can do is to only activate the real email addresses. So because we have a lot of those invalid or fake emails in the system, it's really important that you only activate the real ones. And we can actually pop in and I can show you how we've made some changes recently to be able to account for that. In the Manage User screen here, when you hit this Edit User, oops, I've got the I am able to actually, I'm going to look at an inactive client here. And we're going to activate an email address. And when I go to activate it, I have the option to change the email now to be a real one before I make that, that client live. So I'm going to select the client role and save. Oh, and see the email does need to be valid and the system checks for that. So let's take a look at this one. Looks like it's got some presentation jitters on us here. And before I activate it, I have the option here to change this email. So that's something that you're going to want to make sure that is correct whenever you're activating users. That will just set yourself up for future success down the road. And the other thing is making sure, and while we're in there too, you have both the client and an RP. So understanding the difference between these two roles is really important. The client, you will select the client role here if they are approving only their own time. If they are approving time for themselves as well as someone else, you can select both of these roles. Selecting the responsible party role allows them to be a responsible party for another client. So if they are only signing their own timesheets, you will only select the client role here. Some common errors that we've seen with activating the users. Folks didn't receive the temporary password. So the system sends out the temporary password every time you hit that update button. And if the client or caregiver is saying they did not receive it, make sure they're checking the right inbox, number one. There are a lot of times where the users will have multiple inboxes or multiple email addresses. So be sure that you verify the email address that they're checking. And also encourage them to check the spam or junk folders. A lot of times the notifications do go there. And then of course the password can be reset again if the user still does not receive it. When users log in, they see a blank white screen. So we've seen this on occasion, and this is not a system problem. This is actually a stopgap for you. So if the user sees a blank white screen when they log in, that means that no role has been assigned to that user. So go into that Manage User screen and assign your role. Have the user log in again, and they'll be able to see their connected consumers. And also along that same line, when the user logs in and they're reverted back to the login screen, the reason this is happening is because an admin user is trying to sign in to EVV. Not all roles are EVV available, so when you get kicked back to the login screen, again, go back and verify the role that is assigned to that person, and also verify how they're clocking the time, what URL they're using. They would want to use that app.pavillio.com instead of the EVV app. And when activating the users and you see that error while creating user message, this means that the email address is already in the system. So you want to double check and make sure that you've got it correct for that person, but also see maybe you entered the RP's email in for the client, or the caregiver had the client email. So sometimes it would be entered in the wrong spot in the first place, but when you receive this error, that simply means that the user account, that email address is already in the system. And because a unique ID is required, you need to make sure that you have a unique one before you're able to activate that user.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, Sam, I just wanted to um, just talk about these messages, or rather these issues that people are running into. What we are seeing is just as people start using EVV, there's a lot of end users that have various issues that they run into that unfortunately the agencies having to deal with, and that's just the nature of it. What we have seen with agencies is there is always a spike in um, user issues, whether it's a device issue, they downloaded the app, they have login issues, etc. But over time, that does subside and people get better at it. We have several agencies. I can think of a couple that have over 1,000 clients. When they onboarded people, they had a lot of issues up front, but now the issues are far and few between, and people, as they settle in and start using the app, they get more comfortable and they're more successful with it. So when you're rolling out, if you run into these issues, be patient. Users do adapt, and it does get better. So don't be discouraged. We've seen it, and it always does get better. Go ahead, Sam. Sorry about that.
No, that's great insight there. As you're running through preparing for EVV, just want to reiterate here that we have the EVV Resource Center available for you. Just resources at your fingertips 24/7. We've got the client and caregiver guides in there, past EVV webinars, just kind of the tips and tricks that we've seen and learned along the way. And also in the Resource Center, you can schedule a half-hour visit with me or another CACHE EVV support member to be able to answer any of your EVV questions. How do I activate my users? What's best practice for approving time? We're going to answer some of those questions today as well, but it's just a good time for you to have a one-on-one conversation with somebody who's talked to many agencies on how to handle these things and give you some tips and tricks. That brings us to some year-end considerations. We've got, with the turn of the new year, the focus on EVV, there are some things that you can do just on the regular to set you up for success in the coming year. And one of those things is to make sure your service agreements and care deliveries are set up. You'll want to be sure to pay attention to the end dates on those, more so maybe than you would have to otherwise. Clean up your client and caregivers. So anybody who terminates with you, be sure you're keeping those records accurate. Billing cleanup and timely filing. It's a good time once a year to make sure you're reviewing all of those open claims. There is a minimum wage increase as of January 1, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the non-billable time capture. This is a new option, and we want to be sure you're maximizing Pavillio to increase your agency efficiency. So hopping right into the SA and care deliveries, we do have some tools to be able to help you with this. Again, this is the ability for the caregivers to continue to clock time for the clients. You'll want to be sure that your service agreements coming due, that you're aware of when those are. And the care deliveries, same thing. You want to be sure that you've got accurate care deliveries with accurate activities. And we do have some dashboard widgets that I'm going to show you to be able to give you kind of a snapshot of the care deliveries and SAs coming due. And we also have some reports in the analytics tool that we'll look at. And this will help you track, again, your SA dates and also the utilization to be sure that the clients, you have a preview to when they're going to be running out of units. The app will stop them from going over units once they have exceeded that, but it's good for you to have that insight so you know, hey, this person's been overusing their units and I need to do something about it before they run out. So we can take a quick look at those. We'll look at the dashboard widgets first. So I'm in Pavillio, in the dashboards up here on the upper left, and in the client tab. And if I scroll down, I have here the client care deliveries. So I've got 30, 60, and 90 days, and gives me the dates, start dates and end dates of these care deliveries. And the same for the service agreements. So it tells me when these are set to expire, and I know I need to deal with them within that time frame so that my caregivers are able to continue to clock in.
So, and the reason care deliveries are important is because care deliveries are connected to EVV, and the ADLs and IADLs are derived from the care deliveries. That's why it is important to have the care deliveries updated and available for the next service agreement. So staying on top of this is important, and many of our agencies have gotten adept at using these tools as an early warning system to track care deliveries and service agreements, and they seldom run into situations where someone is not receiving service or someone's unable to clock in because the care delivery is not there, because they're using these tools.
Yes, good points. And secondly, we do have the analytics. I'm just going to show you the icon here up in the upper right. It looks like a little bar graph. And that is going to take us into this analytics tool. You're going to see your dashboard. And we've got the standard analytics 2022. That's the dashboard that has the active essay utilization on it. So hopping in here, and this is a demo agency, so we'll be looking at a little bit of old data here, but down here toward the bottom, we have the client active essay service, client active service agreements. And this has your start dates, your end dates, the service line, the total units, units remaining is here as well. So you'll want to be sure that you take a look at these. And again, this will be really helpful just in terms of monitoring the usage in general. And all of these reports are able to be downloaded as an Excel file, so you can pull them out of here and you can manipulate them however you need to get the data you need.
So just keep in mind, one of the things that we realized is that as we talk to customers and they call in for support, not too many people are aware of the analytics dashboard and a lot of the valuable information that's available. This is one example of that. Client access, while the system is already tracking service agreement utilization and units, and the system is on top of it, there are scenarios where people want to, our customers want, and agencies want to know, where is a particular, I want a report of all service agreements and the remaining units. And this is a report that gives you, and there's several other reports that are immensely valuable. We encourage you to use the analytics dashboard and look at this information, and this can definitely help you with, if you're maintaining external spreadsheets for certain things, you would be surprised as to how much of that's already within the system.
Yeah, there are tons and tons of different things in here. Okay, so hopping back over here, along with making sure you've got a good handle on when your essays and care deliveries expire, we do also want to point out, so with EVV and having the requirement that people are needing to clock in and clock out, an interim essay is going to be required. We all know that DHS and the counties don't necessarily have, a good time management maybe when it comes to dealing with service agreements and making sure you have the new one before the old one expires. So Pavillio actually has a way to you're going to enter an interim essay, and this allows you to set up the same service line for that client, so you can allow the caregiver to continue to clock time knowing that your real service agreement is coming. And Pavillio will actually hold all of the billing for you in the failed card. And then when you add in the active essay, it will revalidate all of those claims automatically. So you don't have to go in and manually touch any of those a second time. So if you have any questions around interim essays, you're not familiar with that process, please reach out to support. It will be really imperative with EVV that you have those interim essays in before the end date of the current one. Cleaning up Pavillio. So, with the start of the year, it's a good practice to get into in general. But as we close 2022 and look toward 23, it's a good habit to just take a look at the data you have. Clean claims and good billing start with good data. So making sure that any information that you put into the system is accurate. Make sure that you don't, I'm going to enter in a fake thing for this and I'll put in the real one later. We get busy, we forget. Make sure that you're putting in accurate data up front. And the other one that I want to point out with the data is making sure to not use any special characters in the client profiles. The name, the address, those things go through to billing and are on the claims in some cases. So these have actually caused entire batches to reject. So you do want to be sure that you've got just the real data in there. If they have an other name, that's fine. You can put that in the other field, but make sure there are no special characters in the profile. And terminating employees and clients that are no longer with you. So make sure that you complete all of your billing for both your clients and your employees before you discharge or terminate them. And this is really important just in that you have an essay change you need to make, you have, an UMPI number you need to add. Make sure all your billing is done for those clients and employees before you terminate or discharge them. But on that same note with EVV, as we're inactivating, caregivers and clients alike, if they're no longer with you, you want to be sure that you're terminating their user role, you're inactivating their user accounts so that they can't continue to clock time, they can't continue to access your system. So having a process in place to make sure that as people are putting in notice with you, that you have a process for terminating those users. Billing and timely filing. Making sure that, again, all clients who have left your agency address those issues, claims issues, failed records. Make sure you address those right away or as quickly as possible. And make sure that any outstanding balance is addressed. If they've got a spend down account, anything in their client financials, you want to be sure that those are addressed as soon as possible. Looking back at the full year for any open claims. It's pretty typical that people get hung up in what they're billing currently. So if you're billing, this pay period, if you're billing this month, make sure that you take some time to look back at the full year to see if there were any claims that denied that you weren't aware of. Make sure if there was a late timesheet maybe that came in and is in the failed card, but you didn't know it was there because you're searching just what's current. So take some time to look back at the full year. And then reviewing that failed card. Again, not just for old stuff, but make sure that you keep up on what is failed on the parked records. Parked records are really important because that's going to be one of your first warnings of, hey, I've got a person who they've exceeded units. I can't continue to allow them to work. We've got those reports and the tools, but seeing parked records in there will also be that clue for you. So make sure you stay on top of those failed card items as well. Prab, anything to add on this?
Yeah, and what we've run into is agencies that stay on top of the failed card and are addressing the issues on a regular basis tend to have fewer billing problems because they kind of get to know what to look for and how to take care of issues. So we, park records is one of them, but just on a on a regular basis, just making sure that you're checking the fail card and addressing the issues. What tends to happen is once you get into the habit of doing that, very quickly you realize that fewer and fewer things show up in the fail card and more things go directly through to claims and get billed out. So it's a good time at the end of the year just to go through and clean out everything in the fail card, and then set yourself up for 2023 with a clean fail card, and that will really help. Go ahead, Sam.
All right, just a general reminder here, January 1st, there are some minimum wage changes in Minnesota, so making sure that you account for those depending on the size of your agency, and also just that you're following any of the employee notification requirements. Capturing that non-billable time. One of the things, and I know we've hit on this in previous webinars too, but making sure that you're taking full advantage of the system. We've put in the non-billable time capture option, and this is super easy to set up. I'll actually pop in there now quick and take you through it. So under administration and masters, we have this non-billable activities. And so to get these set up, you simply come in here and add the activity you want to allow for your agency. We've got admin time, training time, travel time, volunteer time, anything that you think is important for your agency. And then you also have the ability to set the default rate. So in here, you can say for this activity, for this role, I'm going to set a rate of $17 in this case, so that you don't have to go into each individual employee profile to give them a pay rate for that activity. And then as those change, you can update it in one spot. This is particularly useful for training time. If your caregivers are paid a flat rate for training across the board, this is one spot where you can put in a pay rate for everyone all at one time. There are some limitations on this. The non-billable time has to be done in the portal. We don't have this available in the app today. Though we can capture the travel time, we don't have mileage yet in the app, or I mean in the portal at all. We are planning to add mileage, but we do not have that in there today. And then there is not a pre-approved budget for any of these non-billable travel time, admin time. You have to kind of, there is a separate approval process for them, so you can see how many hours people are working, but there's not a way to cap those hours.
Sam, while there are some limitations, this has been a well-received feature. A lot of, in the beginning, we didn't have non-billable time, and many agencies pay for training and travel and other things that are non-billable, but need to be paid out to the employee. So if you're not using non-billable time, 2023 maybe is when you start using non-billable time, if this is something that you're managing outside of the system on a manual basis. So please take a look at that, and there is some documentation available within Pavillio for this. And if you have questions, send us a support ticket. But this is a feature that has been well received.
All right, there are some things too. We're gonna kind of jump into the things you can do daily, weekly, and monthly to make sure that you're successful overall, or increase your chances anyways of having less errors, less billing denials, less client confusion. So on the daily, you can take a look at your client documentation. Make sure your onboarding paperwork is accurate, make sure that it's completed timely, make sure that you you're following all of your agency procedures when you're onboarding clients. And the same with the plan of care documents, making sure that when you start a plan of care document, that you're adding all of the activities, that you're making notes, that you're keeping up with all of the things that are important to that client, so that the caregiver has that information when clocking time, and that if you're ever audited, you've got that available right in the system. And service delivery, making sure that you've got that client override switch turned off whenever possible. So the client override controls many things within the system. So it can allow people to clock in when the client's not eligible. It can allow time to be captured if there are no units left. It changes in some cases the claims that are able to go through to ready, even though maybe you'd prefer that they fail. It changes the way that the auto priority function works. So there are many, many things that are impacted by the client override. Making sure that's turned off is going to be key for you. So the client override, and many of you may be familiar with this, but in the client profile, right underneath the name, you've got the override restrictions. So turning this on is, that's how that's done. You want to keep that off whenever possible. And we also have a report in the analytics tool here that does show all of the clients. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. That does show all of the clients and their override status. So you can take a look here to make sure that all of your clients, that you don't have any surprises, everybody is sitting with that no. And then the overlap warnings. This is a relatively new feature that we added. Folks have the ability to clock in to multiple service lines. So if two caregivers are trying to clock time for the same client, for the same service line, that time cannot overlap. However, if they're clocking in for two different service lines, Pavillio does allow that time to be captured. And the reason is that, say for PCA and homemaking, those services can be done at the same time. But for maybe, respite and PCA, they cannot. So having the ability for you to say, yes, I approve of this one, or no, I don't, is what we have allowed in the system today. So I'm going to hop into the approved visits card, care management approved visits. And I actually
And
have
this
an
is the
example. Yeah, go ahead.
So sorry, Sam, sorry to interrupt. This is a new feature that we added here the last 6 weeks. Because we saw the value in showing an overlap and then letting the agency decide if that is a valid overlap or if that is something that needs to be corrected. So it is a new feature. You may not have seen it if you haven't been looking for it, but the system is capable of flagging this and allowing you to make the decision.
Yep, and I do have an example here. So on December 5th, we've got 2 employees clocking time for 1 client, 2 different service lines, and here we have from 6:16 to 8:16, and here we have from 7:17 to 8:17. So we've got an hour of overlap in there. And you have the ability to either finalize these saying, yep, I approve, or you can change them back to draft for the caregiver to correct, or you can edit them in the system or delete them. So you've got a lot of flexibility to be able to do what you need to do and maintain the integrity of the timesheet. And then, of course, billing and finance, making sure that you are entering those essays as soon as you get them. This allows for the system to revalidate any of those claims that are failed for an interim essay, and also allows just maybe if you have the new one, you don't need to create the interim in the first place. So making sure you keep up on your essays is really important as well.
And just to also talk about some of the new things that are coming in the platform, Q1 of next year, we will have a connection to the Minutes mailbox, and we will automatically download the essays and present them to you, so you don't have to actually go to Minutes to pull the essays. It's one of the features that's coming in the first part of 2023.
You're going to tell all of our secrets, Prabha.
Oh no, okay, I'll try and keep quiet. I get excited. There's a lot of good stuff coming.
Weekly, we've got service delivery again, so make sure you're reviewing the approved visit screen. and approving, taking a look at any of those in the warning card. This is just going to help you kind of stay on top of, you know, any issues. You don't want to wait until you're trying to process payroll to deal with any outstanding issues that you might have to send back to the client or caregiver to correct. So just making sure you stay on top of that. And again, reviewing that failed card, making sure that you're addressing any of those issues that you can handle right away. If you're waiting for an UMPI number, if you're waiting for something, you can make sure you're sending out those communications to get those handled. We do have in the help area some really good tools. We've got the question mark here. And if you type in failed, we do have the failed resolution tips here, and this gives some common reasons that records go into failed and how you correct them. So take a look at this if you haven't already. We are adding more things to this as we're made aware of different issues that people see or questions people have. So send in any, you know, any particular questions you have, but be sure to help check the help area for questions. Just while we're on this screen too, we do have a new email the support team right from Pavillio. If you click on this button down here, it does pop you up to a support ticket right away. So you can just send us a note right from Pavillio. Reviewing your denials. So the denials come directly from the payer. We don't have any more information on those than you do. So if you need to call the payer, if you need more information, it's best to deal with the payer directly on those. If there are then, you know, system things or you have questions on the claim itself, be sure to send a ticket to support. But the first step in denial should be the payer. Taking a look at that claims card, there are a couple of statuses we wanted to point out. When you do your billing, make sure if you see any send faileds that you let us know. There's really only one reason that records go into send failed, and that's because the minutes credentials are no longer valid. So you've had a password change and haven't updated it in Pavillio. So that does need to be updated. The password needs to be updated. And then after about an hour, those claims can be resent. But if you let us know, we can certainly assist with that. And then the rejected ones. Rejected again means something went bad in the batch. And I've seen, you know, something as simple as the address had too many characters and it was rejected by the payer. So some of those things we need to, you know, take a look at what the issue was, resolve it, and then we can get those sent back out. And just your unbilled claims, taking notice of how much is sitting out there, how much you're hanging on to, because that's revenue you could collect that you've not collected yet. Payroll, again, you know, as you process payroll, it's really important to pay attention to those pink lines. The pink lines means that there is an error, and most often this is because there is no pay rate assigned for that employee. If there is no pay rate, the system cannot compute that batch or cannot compute any payroll for that client, or sorry, for that employee. So you want to be sure that you're addressing any of those pink lines right away, that you're adding the pay rates necessary to be sure that the payroll is captured properly for those caregivers. Searching by pay period. One of the, I can pop in and show you here, in Advanced Payroll View, if I've generated a couple of batches, when I resolve the pink lines, I can generate a new batch for payroll. And if I've generated a couple batches, it's possible that I might have missed some records. Here's no, oh, get rid of this guy up here. So here's an example of the pink lines, kind of the missing pay rates for these folks. But if I've generated several batches, it's possible that I might not have exported some records. So in Advanced Payroll View, I can actually search for my date range and I can see what has not been exported. And when I search, I'm going to find any records here. This is demo, of course, but this will display any records that you might have missed in your exports so that you just have that double check, that peace of mind, knowing that you've paid all of your employees what they should have been paid. And then we do have a payroll report in the dashboard as well. Again, back to that dashboard, make sure that you're taking a look at that. There's tons and tons of reports in there, various things. So just take a peek in there. A lot of them are really helpful. And monthly, we've got client eligibility. Of course, eligibility is really important. They need that to be able to clock time. They need that to be able for you to get paid. We've got a dashboard tile that shows the eligibility, as well as some of the reasons that maybe the eligibility has changed in analytics. So I'll pop in there too. So right here, we've got 3 clients who aren't eligible. And it's going to tell you, what the issue is, what the payer should be here. Take a look at these. You want to pay attention to them. Make sure that your waiver is set up in your service agreement correctly. Make sure that your payer is set up in your service agreement correctly. Those will cause eligibility issues. Other common things would be make sure your birth date is correct and the MA number is correct, because if those are not, your client won't be eligible in the system. So if you have a not eligible, but you look in minutes and yes, they are, please be sure to check the date of birth and the MA number. And then just really quick too, popping over to the analytics here, we have a not eligible by reason. And so this will tell you if the payer has changed. I know sometimes you switch to a PMAP and that you need to update the service agreement to reflect that. So this report will give you those details.
Just to remind everybody,
Yeah, go ahead.
eligibility is automatically run every Sunday night, as well as the first of the month, so that you have the most up-to-date eligibility information. Usually because eligibility changes on the first of the month, we run it again. So the information contained within Pavillio is a result of a eligibility check that was done on a Sunday or the first of the month.
Yes, good reminder there. And also, these are just other reports that are on the analytics tool. So billed aging, unbilled aging, accounts receivable, and then your client unpaid balances and spendos. We've got reports out there. Please check them out. It's a good thing to look at on a monthly basis, just to be sure you know where your agency's at, you know what's still outstanding for you to collect on. And employee OIG, we do check the OIG every month. Is published right around the 10th of the month. That is brought into Pavillio. Any employee is automatically put on an OIG suspension if they do fall on that list. So they won't be able to clock time. And to see that, you can actually filter in your current employees screen by OIG suspended, and you'll see any employees who would fall on that list. And yearly, make sure you set up the holiday schedule in Pavillio in that master's area. You can set up holidays for the next year, and that, again, your payroll is calculated based on the holidays that you have set for your agency. Reviewing your forms, make sure that the forms you're using are the most current forms. We do try to keep up with any DHS changes, or if the W-9 changes, anything that that we can keep up with, we do try. If you see something in Pavillio that isn't current, feel free to send a note and we'll get that updated in the system. And make sure to just stay apprised of the legislative changes and budget changes that are likely to affect you, your agency, the whole industry. There's a current budget surplus of 17.6 billion. So there's, talk about different ways that that could be spent to support disability services. Prabha, some general reminders?
Yes, some general reminders here. Before I jump into that, we've got some good questions that have come in. If you have questions, please ask your questions in the questions section on the right-hand side. And there are a couple of questions that I do want to address. Sam, one of the questions that came in that I think we should just talk about is what services don't require a RP signature, or rather, what services require RP signature, what services maybe don't require RP signature. And me personally, I know that a PCA service requires an RP signature. Are you familiar with what other services don't require an RP signature?
I think that the individualized home supports without training does require an RP signature, I believe. Other ones that are more like the traditional services that are operated by the agency, you know, the agency does the scheduling and the management of those folks. I would suspect that those are the ones that don't. I don't know right offhand though, to be honest. I would have to do a little bit more research on that.
Okay, well, and in our when we send out the webinar recording, and it'll contain answers to the questions in that, we'll be sure to put that information in there. Okay, general reminders. There's a lot of information in the help section. Please check that. There's new content that Christine adds to that based on questions that come into the support desk. So that is a very useful source of information. So please look through that. We do releases every 2 to 3 weeks. If you go into anytime a release note pops up, review that, because there is new features that we are adding. We're doing this every 2 to 3 weeks, so the platform is evolving and growing every day. So please make sure to look at that. And you can also go to on the top right-hand corner under your name. If you click on that, you can also see the prior releases. So please take a look at that. Lots of people are starting to use the platform. Like I said, there's about 15,000 EVV users now. So we have a lot of people on the platform now. The agencies yourselves, didn't have to deal with multiple users outside of your organization, but now you do, and protecting PHI is very important. So be diligent, make sure that if a caregiver RP is no longer with the agency, that you terminate them and disable their account so that they don't have access to your system and the information.
Yeah, if I could just hop in there too, Prabha. So one of the things when you're activating those users, make sure you're double checking the roles each time that you activate somebody, just to be sure you're giving them the access that you intend to give them.
Okay. Sam showed you a couple of things in the analytics dashboard. There is a tremendous amount of information. We were talking about accounts receivable and aging. There are many, many charts in there that give you a lot of information. For those of you who are looking for financial information about services that have been built out, there's a wealth of information in there. Please take a look at that, and that can be very useful for yourself as well as your accountant. Are you an agency that is using some spreadsheets? Do you have some spreadsheets outside of the system? If you do, we designed the system so that you don't have to have external spreadsheets to track various things. If you are using a spreadsheet, try us out. Ask us, hey, I have a spreadsheet doing X, Y, Z. Do you have a way to do this within the system? More than likely, we probably have a way to do it within the system, and you don't need to maintain external spreadsheet. Sam already covered this. You can open a ticket within Pavillio. And finally, we love suggestions. Send us suggestions. Many of the changes that we make to the system is a result of suggestions that come from our customers and our users. So please send us suggestions. If you have ideas, we'd love to hear them. Okay, a couple of items here. We have a lot of things planned for 2023. A couple of things that are of interest. if any of the agencies are doing ICF billing, we've actually moved this up, and it's actually, we're looking to complete this before the end of the year. So you will be able to do ICF billing through Pavillio before the end of the year. We're excited to have that included. EMAR and skill services are planned for Q2 of next year. We think that's it's necessary. There are a number of customers that can benefit from that. And I also spoke about the agency inbox, which is the ability to download documents from minutes. Many other features are also slated for the first half of next year. Too many to list, but like I was saying earlier, keep an eye on the release notes, because that's where we will be publishing the new items that we're developing. Okay, we are a little over time here. We've had some good questions. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for joining us, and most of all, happy holidays and happy new year. Thanks, everyone.